provide a basic baseline for the presentation that I'm getting ready to go through. So Kelly, do you have? Does everybody have one? It is a quiz. We're going to take 5. Huh? It's not going to get graded. You don't get graded. It's not like good or bad. But I want you guys to go through the quiz. I'm going to give you guys probably 2 minutes. And then at the end, you don't have to worry about tallying everything. At the end of my presentation, then I want you guys to go through and grade yourselves. Yes, did you have a question? More copy? Do you need a copy? Here, you can have my copy. You got the special copy. And as you guys are doing this, when I go through the presentation, I want you guys to ask questions if you have them. Don't hold your questions to the end. If you have a question on something, please feel free to ask. If you don't have a Facebook account, then just put not applicable. Or so you can get your minds kind of thinking about social networking, rules of the road, all that good stuff. So by a show of hands, how many of you in this room know the correct fork to use at dinner? Sorry, work your way in. So there's an etiquette for eating. There's also an etiquette for social networking. And what we're going to talk about today is kind of the rules of the road, things you should do, things you shouldn't do, some of the gray areas, how people look at it, etc. So as you guys can see, 76% of about 700 human resources surveyed said technology breaches such as sending emails to the wrong person can adversely affect a person's career prospect. You guys don't have to talk out loud, but I want you to think if there's ever been an instance where you've seen this happen, where you've been in an environment where you've heard about someone doing something that probably hurt their career. So we're going to go through a couple different things. We're going to go through mobile devices, texting, phone, video, and web conferencing, email and instant messaging, professional networking sites such as LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, for those of you who have it, social networking sites, so LinkedIn would be professional, social would be Facebook and Twitter, and then networking in just 5 minutes a day. So I'm going to start off with a question. What do you guys think is wrong with this picture?
That lady is not paying attention to that presentation.
Do you think that's wrong?
It's extremely annoying.
It can be annoying if you're a presenter, maybe. But do you think there's some circumstances where a presentation like that is okay? Right. The answer is there's really no right or wrong answer on if this is acceptable or not acceptable. Sometimes in meetings we have to be tuned in. There are presentations that go on all day. Sometimes you have emails that have to be answered. There's no right or wrong answer, but there is a certain etiquette that you probably should follow. So I want to show you guys some survey results. Take a look at this. Checking email during meetings gets mixed reviews. So it's never okay to send email. It's never okay. 38%. Email devices should be completely turned off. If you have somebody that's in a presentation and they say, before the presentation, please turn off all email devices, maybe best to do that. It's okay to read and respond to messages during the meeting, but only if the message is urgent. 35% of people said that's okay. It's okay to check messages as long as attendees excuse themselves, 20%. And it's perfectly acceptable to read and respond to messages during the meeting, especially at a time when it's being said, what's being said does not pertain to them. So it really depends on the environment that you're in, okay? Is anybody surprised by this? No? No surprises? You're surprised that some people do think it's okay? So we asked CIOs, in your opinion, has the increased use of mobile electronic gadgets increased or decreased the number of breaches in workplace etiquette over the last 3 years? Does any of this surprise you guys? It's increased it somewhat, it's basically remained the same. Some said it increased significantly. So what kind of things do you think we do that offend our colleagues in a workplace?
Texting while they're talking to you?
Texting while they're talking. While they're actually talking to you. Hold on, I'm hearing you. You hear everything you say. What else?
Sure you do.
The ringtone. So you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden their ringtone goes off. What else? This is one of my favorites, and it's funny when I go through this presentation, I've actually been guilty of doing this. The Bluetooth in the ear. You don't have to be the person that has it on 24/7, although they are very handy, and I use one. But I've actually caught myself doing this, and you have to be very careful. So one of the other things is you have to watch out for too much information. Have you ever been caught up in a conversation, been in maybe an office, and maybe, or even an airport, or standing in line, and you were talking about business? How do you know if one of your competitors is sitting behind you? You never know, so you have to be very careful with too much information. Annoying, go ahead.
I'll add to that, not just business, but people talk about incredible personal things.
Oh, yes, they do.
And that's way too much.
Yeah, and then you have the loud talker. It's like, you don't need to know this about your family or your dog or whatever it is. So someone mentioned ringtones. Who has a really fun ringtone? Raise your hand, it's okay. What is it? Who let the dogs out?
It's just a dubstep tune.
It's what?
It's just like a techno tune.
Okay, a techno tune. Okay. Anybody have Disco Inferno? That's a good one. Have you ever heard that? Be very cognizant of the ringtone that you had. It's perfectly acceptable to have fun ringtones. I personally have ringtones for different people. One person may be Disco Inferno, one person maybe who let the dogs out. The point is, when you're in a professional setting, it's very distracting to all of a sudden hear a song like that, so it's something to be very cognizant of. So watch out for too much information. My next question is, how many of you guys text message colleagues? I do, all the time. Do you think there's an etiquette to that? In a business setting? Because I mean, you text your friends one way, you text your colleagues a different way, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about texting etiquette, because this has become very, very big. And recently, probably in the past year, even in our offices, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of texting that's going on between colleagues. I do it with my managers. I text them. Sometimes it's easier than sending an email. So the light on the acronyms. Does anybody know what AFC means? Because I didn't previously. AFC, football conference? No? AFC? Away from computer? Does anybody know what CYE means?
Usually it's AFK, away from keyboard.
Oh, away from, see, that's a good one. That's a new one. All right, away from keyboard. What else? CYE?
Cover your everything?
Cover your everything, maybe. CYE, check your email. So, for example, these are used pretty heavily. I didn't even know what they mean. If somebody said CYE to me, I'd be like, excuse me, what? I don't even know what that means. What are some other common acronyms that you can see in texting?
LOL.
LOL, which stands for?
Laugh out
Laughing
loud.
out loud.
HMU.
Oh, okay, that's a new one. What's HMU?
Hit me up.
Hit me up. Okay.
I use it all the time. Hit me up.
Hit me up. See? All these ones. What else?
BTW.
By the way. Oh, I know that one. Yes. What else?
IMHO.
What?
IMHO.
IMHO?
In my honest opinion.
Or humble opinion.
Or humble opinion.
We could get a whole list of these. So my point is, I'm learning all these new ones. My point is, you guys may know those, and they may be appropriate for your circle of friends, but in a professional setting, I would suggest not using them, because you could come off talking literally a completely separate language. So you're sending your boss IMHO or HNU, hit me up. I agree. Might not be the best thing to send to your boss. Text selectively. Okay? Does anybody have the group messaging option on their phone? If you have the iPhone, most people have the group messaging. Be very careful, because not everybody knows that. So if you're sending an iPhone and you send it to 8 different people, once one person replies all, or hits it, it automatically replies all. Yeah. So has anybody ever done that? If you send a message and you include it to 8 different people, and one of those 8 different people replies, all 7 other people can see that reply. So they may think they're replying something to you, but that's not the case. Everybody can see it, and I've seen a lot of people get in trouble doing this in personal and in professional situations. We're going to talk a little bit more about the email, but in text messaging, when you send group text messages, it's the exact same thing as the reply all feature. Don't be mysterious. Good. What do you think that means? Be clear. So if you're sending something in a professional setting and it's a text message, don't assume that somebody has your name saved. I mean, I've asked people, like, who is this? I'm sorry, your name's not saved. So when you are sending a professional text, if you're sending a text in a professional setting, make sure you identify yourself at the bottom. So if I send a text to somebody, I'll put A. Wagner, or Ashley Wagner. Okay? Here's my next one. So with a show of hands, how many of you check or respond to email or do other work while you're on a conference call? Conference call, it's a good time to get a lot of work done. Huh? Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a survey. We ask executives, when you participate in meetings via teleconference, how frequently do you do other things like answer emails, surf the web, have other meetings during a conference call?
Okay, those people are lying.
Really?
They never and not frequently are lying.
Maybe there's some people that find some of these conference calls very interesting. Hey, I can have some interesting conference calls. Or sometimes you have to pay attention. If I call you out, if I ask you by name, you want to pay attention. So does any of this surprise you guys? No? The one thing I will tell you guys, I do check emails during some conference calls. Not all conference calls. You have to be cognizant of it. I would suggest you don't, because there could be very important information that you're missing, and how silly are you going to feel if you get called out on a conference call? So, hey, John, what did you think about my last statement? Okay, see, he's checking his email and not even paying attention. So, see, that could be very embarrassing. We don't need that to happen. Sorry. So easy.
It's actually nicely multitask.
So he knows exactly what I was talking about. That's my point. You can multitask. There are some individuals that can get away with it. I would just be very, very cognizant of doing it. So I'm going to go through some of the rules of the road in regards to if you are sitting on a conference call or if you're conducting a conference call. Take a trial run. Test the equipment before you get on it. I've had multiple conference calls where you're scrambling and you're in a big hurry, and next thing you know, nothing works. Nobody can hear you, you've got beeps all over the place. Also, when you get on a conference call, and we work for very large companies, so we have hundreds of people sometimes on conference calls. 2 things, if you're conducting the conference call, make sure you tell people to mute the line, okay, because you can hear all sorts of fun things. And number 2, do not put it on hold, because a lot of companies have very large, or hold music. So for example, if you have 200 people that are on a conference call and one person puts it on hold, you ruin the entire conference call for everybody. You do not want to be that person. Don't do that. So in the beginning, also make sure that you ask for that. So 2 things, there's 2 sides. If you're sitting on a conference call, make sure you do that, hang up. If you have another call that's important coming in, and if you are the speaker on the conference call, make sure you warn people in the beginning. Watch the clock. So just make sure if you have a conference call that's starting at 3, you don't start the conference call at 3:15 because you leave people sitting there waiting. It's just more of a nice thing to do. Get the team ready. If you have a group of people that are going to be co-presenting with you, or if you have presentation material, make sure you send it out before. If you want somebody to read the presentation material, just make sure you ask. There's nothing more annoying than you're sitting on a conference call and you're like, oh, by the way, I'm going to send all this out. And then you have to wait for people to read it, open the attachment, all that stuff. So just make sure you're prepared. And be a good host. Involve people. Conference calls can be, and you guys are all making a face about conference calls. Conference calls can be very draining. They can be sometimes monotonous. They're very boring. Be a good host. There is a lot of different ways to involve people in a conference call. Don't drag conference calls on. Be short, concise, get the information that you need. Okay, any questions? Conference calls. So, some of these things I just talked about. Be inclusive. Enjoy the silence. What do you guys think that means? If you are the presenter or you're the host, the conference call host, what does enjoy the silence mean? Don't freak out over it. It's okay.
Don't talk for the sake of talking.
Correct. Ask somebody once if they have any questions. Remember, people are in mute, so it's okay if they're silent. Sometimes people, when they start hosting conference calls in the beginning, they kind of freak out. When it's very quiet, if it's quiet, that typically means that people are listening. We talked about don't put people on hold, use mute. We talked about that. Anybody else have any more tips on conference calls? Maybe tips to make conference calls more engaging, things you should or shouldn't do? Yes?
I'd say one thing is, when you're speaking, be articulate. Some people don't enunciate and they don't speak clearly, and so if you're on a phone, particularly on a cell phone,
Yeah.
so people should be cognizant of that.
Absolutely. And if you're on, that's a very good point, especially if you are conducting, there you go. If you are conducting conference calls from your cell phone, sometimes you don't realize how bad the connection really is. I would always have somebody, like just an appointed person, like if it's your admin or if it's one of your colleagues, have them not afraid to speak up and say, hey, we can't hear you. Because sometimes a lot of people get on the conference call and they don't want to be the person to call you out, saying, hey, it sounds terrible. I'll hear wind in the background, everything else. So I would always have a person appointed, especially if you are taking a conference call from the phone. Yes?
It's a good point, especially as a new employee, as some students here might be, you might be on a cell phone. I would try to get to a landline. It sounds old-fashioned, like most guys, but I try to get there because the sound still is much more clear than it is.
Absolutely. And if you are on a cell phone, I know we talked about mute. There is a mute button on your cell phone. It is very difficult because you don't want to, like again, I keep saying you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be the person where you can hear the wind, maybe your radio music, people talking in the background, especially over your cell phone. Make sure you use the mute button. And most conference calls, if you're on it for the first time, when they're logging on, it'll say, hey, to mute, press *6. You can press *6 or you can mute it on your cell phone. Yes?
I think another thing that would be nice to do is, whether you're hosting it or you're part of it, put down some notes before you start it. Because that way, you're not
Absolutely. So that goes back to prepare and make sure you're prepared. You've got a good flow. You know the topics that you're going to cover. Yes?
I've been in conference calls. We had 20-person table, and there was only 2 microphones, so it was all speakerphone. And you just get people who don't talk loud enough.
Right.
That they don't sit near the microphone, so you can't hear them at all, and you're all looking at each other going, I have no idea what they're saying.
Right. That's another point. There's also times where you'll have conference calls where you may have 10 people in front of you and another 50 people on conference call. When you're having a call like that, it's very natural for you to just talk to the 10 people that are in the room and almost kind of forget that you're on a conference call. Be very cognizant of situations like that. If you're involving people that are in the room, make sure you involve people that are on the conference call line as well.
And allow for the time delay.
Yeah.
There's a slight delay.
If I ask if there's any questions? Nope, no questions. Remember, people have to take it off mute. They have to press *6. Sometimes it takes a couple minutes. Any other comments? Comments or suggestions on conference calls? Okay, so now we're going to talk about one of my favorites. Oh, do you have one? Email. These are some embarrassing email blunders that we have personally seen. I'm sure you guys have a lot to add to this. I once sent a job offer to the wrong person. Someone sent out confidential salary information to the entire firm. That's going to cause a few problems. Someone made a nasty comment about a supervisor, and it was sent to the supervisor by mistake. It led to dismissal. A person called another employee an idiot in an email to everyone in the company. Ever meant to reply, and it hit reply all with Joe's an idiot? Whoops. What else? Anybody else see any? Yeah, go ahead.
Instead of sending a professional one, you accidentally send one to your friend that's supposed to go to your friend.
Yeah.
And your boss gets it.
Yep.
Says that you're going out and getting drunk.
Whoops. What else?
I had a coworker who send an email and she didn't pay too close attention to how she typed a word in the subject line and added an extra letter and,
Oops.
yeah. Kind of was a swear word right in her subject line and she didn't mean it. She didn't notice till she hit send and she cringed because it was to a supplier.
What else?
Attaching the wrong file.
Attaching the wrong file, yes. Forgetting the file. Anybody else? Yes?
Some people, like, even in their emails or, like, anything, will talk in text, and
Yes.
it's really hard to understand them.
Yes, I have put LOL in some of my professional
Or the smiley
emails.
face.
Probably not good.
Or smiley face.
Smiley face, yeah, the smiley faces can be overly done very easily.
I think another one that might look bad, especially with the professional one, is spelling error.
Yes, spelling errors is very bad. A lot of times people don't mean to do it, it's just you're moving very quickly. I've done it before.
The other one is using an email, pretty pimp 27.
Oh yes, we're going to talk about that. That is, yes, Pretty Pimp 27 is probably not a good personal email to use. What about using, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but what about using your professional email as a personal email? It can always be read. If you don't want somebody to read it, I wouldn't put it in your professional email at all. You're emailing your girlfriend or your significant other. There's some things that really probably shouldn't be out there. Anybody else? Any other email blunders? So I'm going to go through some different guidelines to help you guys hopefully not make some of the mistakes that we've made. We just talked about this. Use only one account for work. Also, if you have an iPhone, and I know there's multiple others, if you have an iPhone and you're replying back, it will sometimes, default to your personal email. Pretty Pimp 27. You don't want to be emailing your boss and it can reply back. Does everybody know what I'm talking about on the iPhone? You have to make sure that your default is set for depending on where you're emailing from.
And it's true for most of the smartphones.
Okay, it's true for I'm very familiar with the iPhone, so yes, that is true for most of the smartphones. Just make sure you only have one that's defaulted for work and you set your settings the correct way because you don't want it to come replying back from another one. Be mindful, okay, which account you use in job search. This goes back to that. If you are using a job search, they had some really good ones here. You don't want it to have party animal or looking for fun or the gentleman in the back is. The colorful one.
That's mine.
Oh, that was yours? So don't want you coming this on you. You don't want, it says something about you. I can't tell you some of the emails I've seen. It's just insane, and we just get a good giggle out of them. This is ridiculous. Be professional, especially if you're using it for a job search. Respond in a timely manner. What is the general, does anybody know what the general rule of thumb is to responding to an email? 24 hours. That's correct. If you're going to be, let's say you're in a meeting for 3 or 4 days and you can't get to emails for 24 hours, let's say you guys, your AITP conference for 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is. Make sure you're using out of office because what you don't want is somebody sending you an email and wondering what happened. So 24 hours is the general rule of thumb. Be clear in your subject line. Okay? Do you think it's okay to send emails without subject lines? No. Always have a subject line. So even if it's an FYI or please respond, please review, keep it short and light. Okay? A lot of times people, we use emails as if we're talking. So just how you would talk, you put it in an email. Don't go on and on and on in paragraphs. If you've got stuff like that, just make sure it's bulleted. Okay? Don't cry wolf. Oh, I'm the biggest offender of this. Do you know what cry wolf means? Don't highlight it. Mark really important urgency if it's not. Sometimes I get in a hurry and I'm like, it's urgent, it's urgent. It's really not urgent. It's not a 911. Sometimes it can be overused, so it's just like the little boy that cried wolf. If you mark half of your emails as urgent 911, people really aren't going to pay attention to it anymore. Use reply all selectively. We talked about this. Remember, reply and reply all are right next to each other. Be very careful how you do this because you can make some really ugly mistakes replying all. And think before you send. This goes into the think before you send and proof before you send. Make sure what you're sending is the message that you want to get through. And somebody was talking about using grammatical errors. Look at your email. Make sure you proof it, okay, especially in a professional environment. How many of you have either in your office or have used instant message before? Everybody's familiar with instant messenger? Okay. We actually, in our company, we actually just got instant message probably in the past year. So not every office has it. Not every office has instant messages, but the popularity of it is growing, especially with different operating systems that companies are upgrading to. It allows for that feature. How many of you use it regularly? What does that mean? Well, assume nothing, but just because somebody, so you guys have the box, you've got your instant message box, just because somebody says available doesn't mean that they're sitting at their desk. So just don't assume that they're sitting there just because they're highlighted green or red or yellow, whatever their color is, okay? Restrain yourself. I have seen so many people get sucked in from instant message, and next thing you know, an hour has gone by and you're just sitting there instant messaging everybody. You may have 16 boxes open. It can go overboard really quickly, especially, I've seen some of our coworkers, but some of my account managers get very excited over instant message. And it can be very time consuming, and it can be a huge productivity killer. Instant messaging is great for a quick message, okay, 2 or 3 lines. If you have more to say, put it in an email. Do not get sucked in on playing on instant message all day long, okay? And remember, who knows what the digital footprint is? Yes?
It's just